Hello friends! The brand new Christmas in July 2026 kit from Gina K Designs has been out for a little while now, and you may already have your kit. And today I want to show you that this kit is not only a Christmas kit, but you can create some beautiful everyday products with it too. I have a few ideas and I can't wait to share them with you. So let's get right down to my desktop. There are 3 products from the Christmas in July 2026 kit that I'm really going to focus on today because I think that you can use them to make everyday beautiful floral cards. That is the Bursting Blossoms 3D embossing folder, along with the coordinating stencil and the Postage Plus stamp. I love all of these. Even though the stamp has Happy Holidays and December on it, you can use some of the other stamps too to make it a non-holiday themed postal card. So we're going to play with these products today and put aside Christmas for just a few minutes. So let me get out the colors I'm going to use. I'm so excited about them. For today's card projects, I am using some of my favorite Gina K colors. My first favorite is Sunkissed Coral. And then to get a darker, kind of more vibrant color, I'm going with Coral Reef. This one is Marigold. It's just going to be a tiny little touch. And then I'm going to use fresh asparagus. I know that this is a favorite of so many for florals in Gina K's collection. Then I'm using a color that I don't use very often, and that's dark sage, but that's going to add that depth to the leaves that I want. Then for the background, I'm using powder blue, and powder blue isn't a color that I use very often, so I love that I get to incorporate it with some of my favorite colors. So I'm going to pull out a couple of master layouts as well. Since we're going with a postage theme here, I'm starting with Master Layouts 14. I love this almost A2 size postage frame set right here. They're all attached, but you can also cut them apart if you want to. I just love the varying shapes and sizes. It's one that I use a lot. Then I have the triptych in the Master Layouts 15. I love that this one can be used vertically or horizontally on a card. And I think that both of these together will create a duo of cards that are just perfect. So I have already cut both of these die cuts out, and then I'm going to grab my 3D embossing folder. This is the Bursting Blossoms embossing folder that we just received in the Christmas in July 2026 kit. And what I'm going to do now is selectively place my flowers on this die cut. I want to get the majority of the flowers on this piece as much as possible. So that means that this flower is going to be up in that right quadrant. This one is going to kind of cover both of these, and the rest are just going to lie where they lie. If you decide, you can do it at an angle, more at an angle, to get things where you want them to be. But I really want it to be straight, and I want this flower to be kind of up in that right-handed corner. Okay, so I'm going to get that in place and then run this through my die cutting machine on the 3D embossing folder setting. Okay, let's take a look at how this turned out. So excited. And I bet some of you have never tried to use your 3D embossing folder on these postage kind of die cuts, but look at how great that turned out. You can still see your little dashed lines, you still have your holes there, you just have that 3D image there that we can then color in. So I'm going to do the same thing with this one from Master Layouts 15, but on this one I want to focus on this flower. So I'm going to place this flower kind of at the top of this 3-part postage, just like that, so I can get the majority of the flower up there. Then I'll run this through my die cutting machine. Okay, let's take a look at how this one turned out. Fantastic. All right, so now we have our 2 die cuts with our florals. I'm going to start with this one, and we're going to use the coordinating stencils to color that in. But first, I want to add a little bit of interest to the background only using our brand new postage stamp from the kit. Okay, I have my double background 2 grip mat here in my MISTI so that everything can stay in place. I'm going to use my Postage Plus stamp. This is found in the brand new Christmas in July kit. And we are going to add some postage details, but we're going to keep out the Christmas ones. So for this one, this is the biggest area I have right up here at the top. I want to add peace right in here, but I don't want Happy Holidays to be showing at all, and I don't want 25 or December to be showing. So I'm going to place my circle right up here in that top corner, pick it up, but then I'm going to use some tape to cover up the 25 and December, just like that, so that when I ink this up, and I'm going to be using powder blue here, I'm not going to get powder blue on that part of the stamp. Okay. Now, holidays and happy are right off of the edge, so I don't have to worry about those. I'm going to remove that tape right before I stamp and just stamp right there. So there's my piece. I'm going to do that one more time. So cover up that 25 in December one more time. Grab my beautiful powder blue, pull my tape off, and stamp. And then I can throw that tape away. All right, so next, I'm going to grab those postage lines and add some right here at the top. So they're just going to be coming through over the top of the word peace. And I can see through my stamp there, I don't want them to go over the letters. So I'm going to make sure that the bottom line is right above the E in peace. There we go. And then I'm just going to ink up that bottom half of the stamp and stamp. Now these don't have to be perfect because they're kind of distressed anyway. That's the fun of it. All right, take that one off. Then I'm going to do 12 cents right here in this open area between the leaves. I'm kind of just fitting things in where they look like they belong. They fit right around these florals. Okay, powder blue again. Oh, that stamp's so pretty. Love it. Take off the 12 cents, and then I'm going to add postage right above it. So this one's going to be kind of just layered up on the stem of that flower so that that E goes right to the edge. This is a really fine detail kind of stamp, so don't smush it. That looks fantastic. Okay, the last one I'm going to do is First Class right down here at the bottom. Now this one is going to go over the center line, and it's going to go over the leaf on the C, but that is going to be totally fine because my leaves are going to be ink blended in green. I'm not too worried about, you know, powder blue kind of mixing with that green. There we go. Perfect. That is exactly what I wanted. So now that we added a little bit of stamp detail, I'm going to clean off my stamps and then we can get ink blending. Now I'm pulling out the Bursting Blossom stencil, and I'm going to start with stencil A. So remember when you're lining up your stencils with your 3D embossed images, that if you don't make them all line up all at the same time, it's okay. Focus on one part at a time. So if I had a hard time lining both of these up, I would just choose that top section, then move on to the bottom section. But I got all those lined up at the first try. So I'm gonna start out with Sunkissed Coral. Okie dokie, here we go. I love this color so much. It is one of my favorites. I'm gonna do this a little bit light in Sunkissed Coral. Now there's nothing I have to mask here really on these larger ones. Now what I am going to do is kind of do an overall wash, but then focus a little bit more on the center so that it gets darker in the center and works its way out to kind of lighter. Okay, so here I'm going to do an overall wash. And then I'm going to go out from the middle and make it darker right here at the base. Perfect. Now, for these bottom ones, I want those little slivers to be a bit brighter and darker. So I'm going to use Coral Reef for those. This one is a little bit more intense. A little bit more fiery. All right, let's take a look. Beautiful. All right, so that's perfect. We can move on to stencil B. Gonna try lining this up all at once, but if I can't, not a big deal. That looks good there. And it's really important to kind of hold up your stencil with both of your hands while you're getting it in place so that it doesn't stick to your mat or whatever you're using to hold it in place. I'm going to focus right now on this upper portion and then cover that up. Okay, so now I'm going to go in with Coral Reef for these. Now notice that this is a leaf here, so I'm trying to stay away from that leaf. It's not close enough to where I need to cover that up, but I'm just being mindful of that. Look at that, pretty. Okay, so then I'm gonna go down here. Ooh, look how pretty that is. Okay, I'm gonna move this. Love it. Move this over just slightly and make sure that that gets all nice and lined up. Okay, I'm going to switch back for this flower to Sunkissed Coral. I think I want this one to be a little bit more soft than the other one, because two flowers can be next to each other and they might be the same kind of flower, but they might look very different. So we're going to lean into that. Now I did an overall wash of color, and then I'm just going into the center and adding a little bit more depth to the center point. Let's take a look at that. So pretty. All right, now I'm gonna wait and come back to my leaves after I'm done with all of my flowers so that I don't have to clean all of my stencils halfway through. It just makes it a little bit faster. So now I'm gonna put the final petals on here and just make sure all of these line up. That looks great. Both of these at the top are going to be Coral Reef. And I am going to cover up this leaf right there just in case I don't want to get Coral Reef on the green leaf. So I'm going to make this one a little bit more intense since it's kind of the base of the flower. I really want that color to come up there. And this one is kind of behind the other petals, so I'm going to make this one a little bit darker too. Okay, now these two right here, are also our flowers, but I want them to be a bit lighter. So I'm going to cover up that leaf again. I'm going to wipe off my brush and swap out to Sunkissed Coral. Sunkissed Coral has a bit more pink to it than Coral Reef. Coral Reef has more red and it's just more intense, but they both pair so beautifully together. All right, let's get in there. And let's get in here. I'm going to cover up this little section of leaf down here too. Okay, let's take a look and see if there's any areas we want to touch up just a tad. Now, what I am going to do, since there's a little bit of white there, I'm going to move this just ever so slightly up to the right so that I can see that white line. Then I'm going to take my Coral Reef and kind of color that in. And that's going to take away that kind of vibrant white line there. It makes it look a lot nicer. So pretty. Okay, I'm really happy with the way those turned out and how I colored those petals. So now I'm going to clean off all of my stencils with just some alcohol and a rag, and then we can move on to our greens. So here I have stencil B. This is our first stencil that has some leaves on it. I'm going to kind of look at my largest leaf here and get that lined up. Now this one isn't as three-dimensional as some of those flower petals, so you really have to pay attention here where you're lining that up. But I got it on the first try. I'm going to focus on this leaf only and not worry about this bottom leaf at the moment. I'm going to cover up that area right there, and I'm going to use my fresh asparagus to just color an overall wash of color on my leaf. I'm just going to actually move this up just the tiniest bit to make sure that my flower right there is covered. There we go. Now when you do this overall wash of color, it really brings out those debossed lines. It makes it look really beautiful. Before I do anything else, I'm going to grab my dark sage. Okay, I'm going to just take a smaller brush and I'm going to do a tiny bit of dark sage down from the bottom. This is going to really bring in some of that depth into our leaves. All right, let's take a look. Beautiful. Okay, the bottom of this leaf is so far down that you can hardly see it. It's just the tiniest bit down here, and I am going to skip it because it's so small. It's probably not even a quarter of an inch. I am not even going to color that part in. I'm just going to leave it white. So now we can move on to stencil C. Stencil C has a couple leaves on it. Our big one down here on the left, and this one right here in the middle. That looks great. And I'm going to cover up this flower right here so that I don't get that there. And we have this little leaf down here as well. So we're going to start with our wash of fresh asparagus. Right here. I'm going to cover up this little guy right here too. I have plenty of pieces of tape here on my desk to cover everything up. There we go. So now I can take my little bit of dark sage and go up from the base. Just to add that depth of color. Now my little leaf down here, I noticed that I was a little bit off, but it's not going to be really that noticeable. I'm just going to just tilt this down just a little bit and go in with my dark sage. No one will notice if it's slightly off, my friends. Look at how beautiful that is. Those leaves are fantastic. Okay, so now we can go on to Stencil D. So Stencil D has our stems and the flower center. The stems are pretty deep at the top, so they're quite easy to see. And then when you get further down to the bottom, they're harder. So just line it up as best as you can. Use the outlines of the flowers here to help guide you. And the closer that stencil is to the cardstock, the better you're going to be able to see those lines. So that looks perfect right there. I'm going to cover up that flower center. Now I'm going to go in with a little light bit of fresh asparagus just for that bright green. And then we're going to go in a little bit heavier with our dark sage, because I want that darkness and that depth of green on our stems. Okay, so now our fresh sage, I'm going to kind of really focus on these areas underneath and our buds. Okay. And right there. All right, let's take a look at that. Wow, that is so stunning. So pretty. Now I'm going to give this a really gentle wipe. Not clean it off entirely, but just a wipe so I get most of that green off at the top. I'm going to replace that flower center right where it needs to be. And then I'm going to grab my yellow detail brush, because this is where the marigold comes in. Just that tiny touch of marigold is going to really pop there in the center. And that's all I need to do. So pretty. But we are not done yet. I have one more little thing that I want to do, and it requires masking magic. Okay, this next part shows just what you can do with masking magic. I'm using the masking magic sheets and the coordinating die to the Bursting Blossoms 3D embossing folder. Haven't even snipped it apart yet because I usually don't until I actually need to. I'm going to put my Intricut Mini out, and I'm going to die cut those floral shapes from Masking Magic. So let's run that through. I usually put this on my grit mat, but I didn't want to move my my panel just now. Okay, here we go. So then we have our flower shapes cut out of Masking Magic. I can put this away. And I can grab my pick and stick tool to kind of get the release paper off of the back, or some other kind of sharp object. If you cut right over the cut line on the back, that's also easy. Let me just grab this. This is the trickiest part maybe of creating this card, so not too taxing really. There we go. All right, so here's my release backing off. I'm going to line this up with my flower and cover that up, focusing really on the top corner like that. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing with this one, and this one has that line right there, I think. Is it there? Yes, perfect. It's much easier when you die cut over that line. Okay. Pull this one off. And then I'm going to place this one right over the top, kind of focusing more on that top section. Okay, so now I can grab my powder blue ink, and I'm going to add some blue to the edges. Now I really wanted to cover up the red, because when blue mixes with red, I get purple, and I don't want my flowers to turn purple. I want them to be that coral reef and sun-kissed coral. So, actually going to take this off so that this is setting on my glass mat, because it'll make the ink blending a little bit easier on those edges. And I'm just going to add very light touch of blue in here. And the way this looks when it's up against that coral is just so pretty. So now you can see why I was focusing on getting that masking magic around the top edges of the florals. Okay, so then when I want to move kind of to the side, I can move my masking magic, because you can easily pick that up and kind of replace it down here. And I'm going to make sure to focus on that bottom edge. Okay. Now, I'm not nervous about my powder blue getting on my green. So I'm not too worried about that at all. I'm not going to go all the way out to the center, but just a touch. Okay, for this little guy right here, I'm just going to rip a little bit of tape and just kind of stick it right there. Doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not going to go in too close to that one. Just kind of making my way around the panel to get a little bit of blue added in here. So pretty. And this makes such a difference when you cover up some of that white and you give it just a little hint of color. Now I'm going to go in here and kind of move this one so that it covers that bottom edge of the flower. And I'm going to move this little piece of tape so that it covers this little bud right here. It won't be perfect, but it'll be close enough. And I'm just going to focus right there. I think that should be enough. Let's take a look. Let's remove our masking magic. Oh, it's so pretty. I love it with that powder blue. That pop of red is just so much more intense when you have that powder blue on the background. Look at that. So we just masked off those flowers so that we didn't change their color and got a little blue around the edges. Isn't that just so pretty? Now let's see what we can do with our second panel using Master Layouts 15. Okay, on this panel we have a lot less space to work with, but we can still fit in just a few things. I'm going to grab the 5 cents and I'm going to put this right there because it fits just right above the leaf there. And I'm also going to grab, I think, postage, because these leaves are not as high as, say, our floral is up here, our flower. So I can get that postage right in there. We're going to start with that and just see where that goes. Powder blue. Okay, perfect. Now let's see, is there anything else that I can fit on here just below postage? Maybe I'll do the lines just coming out slightly. Just underneath. Okay, picking that up. That's perfect. All right, clean up my stamp. I'm also going to think about, while I have my Misty out, my sentiment for both of these cards. So I'm going to grab my kit, because the Joyful Borders set has Sending Love. So if you're trying to make the most out of your kit, then it's a good way to do that by just grabbing what you have in your kit. And Sending Love is perfect for year-round. So I'm going to grab a scrap piece of paper here. And I'm going to stamp this on white for this card, but I think maybe I'll stamp it on white twice. Even if I don't use it for one of these cards, I'll have one on hand. Instead of powder blue, I'm going to stamp this within the navy because it's nice and dark and will give me that contrast that I need. There we go. And I'm just going to move this up to stamp the second one. I think that's going to work. I'm living on the edge here. Okay. There we go. So there's our sentiment for both of our cards. Now you could mix this up and use any sentiment from your Gina K stash that you wanted instead of 2 Sending Loves if you were going to recreate both of these cards. But I really love this sentiment and I think it's very pretty. Now we're using the coordinating stencils again. And I just accidentally got my Sunkissed Coral, my blue, so let's try that again. All right, so I'm going to go in here with my Sunkissed Coral. This is going to be a lot faster because we have a smaller panel, only 1 flower. Just kind of do an overall wash of color here and then focus right in the middle. I'm going to switch to a smaller brush here and do that coral reef right there on that tiny one, tiny little petal. Let's pull that off. Perfect. Stencil B has the other half of our petals. I'm going to do the same thing on this one. And then focus on the center. There we go. And since most of that flower is done up there, I'm going to go ahead and go down to my leaf down here. First, make sure that it's completely lined up, which it does look great. And since I don't have much more to do on my flowers, I'll go ahead and switch to my leaves. So I'm going to grab fresh asparagus and color this in. And then grab my small green brush and dark sage. Adding that beautiful low light there. So pretty. All right, so let's go to stencil C. We have one more petal to do on stencil C. We have our little bud right here and then a leaf. So I'm going to have to do some masking. I'm going to mask off that leaf. This one is going to be Coral Reef. I want that to be nice and dark. And then I'm going to clean off my brush a little bit and do Sunkissed Coral for this guy. So fast and easy to do this when you have these stencils and you know exactly what you're doing. It's almost faster the second time because you've already planned out your colors. You know what's what. So it's kind of worth it just to try to make 2 cards in one sitting. All right, I'm going to cover up my red and then go in with fresh asparagus. All of the way here. And then our dark sage. There we go. And then the last step is our flower center and our stems. I'm just going to get these lined up. And I'm going to hold that stencil down against the paper to make sure that everything is lining up perfectly. There we go. So I'm going to start off on my stems and cover up my flower center. Just a really quick wash of fresh asparagus again. There we go. Now, wipe this off. And I'm going to move my brushes out of the way so I don't mix anything up, because that's the worst part here, when you accidentally put your brush in the wrong color. Then I'm going to use my Marigold for that center. Take a look. Oh, it's lovely. I love it. Just a little bit. This is going to be one of those cards that's a little bit more simple, but I'm totally okay with that. We still made 2 cards in one go. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing that we did before and cover up the edges of our flower using our Masking Magic die cut. And I'm going to grab powder blue, wipe off all the ink that's in front of me so I don't mix that in, and give it a little touch of blue. Now I've left it on my mat here, so that's okay. It's not sticking too much. Do I need to move it? No, I think we're good. I think we're good. And I'm not going to go too far out so that I don't need to cover up that flower bud, but down here at the base I don't really need to worry too much about the green. Just get that color around the edges. All right, let's take a look. I think that might have been the fastest I've ever ink blended a floral. That is so pretty. Okay, so we have our little mini panel here from Master Layouts 15, and then we have our large panel here from Master Layouts 14. Let me know in a comment which one is your favorite, and let's make them both into cards. To create my cards, I die cut 2 of the powder blue first class frame cover plates from the kit. So I really love them in this color. This is another one of those items in the kit that you can use at any time of the year. So it's really handy to have this die cut. I love it. And it layers so beautifully on an A2 card too. I also die cut the Sending Love sentiment using the coordinating die also found in the kit. So on this card, this one's going to be pretty fast and simple to put together because it takes up pretty much that entire A2 card size. So I'm just going to use my Gina K tape runner. Oops, I have two of my card fronts here. I'm going to place this right in the center, and I love the way that pops against the white. So, so pretty. Okay, for this layer, I want this to be popped up. Okay, I don't want to lose that dimension though. So using your tape runner on a 3D embossed panel is a little bit scary, because then if you push too hard on your tape runner, you can push down on some of that dimension. So all I'm doing here is just putting some foam adhesive on each panel, because I also don't want to cover up those holes where you see that blue peeking out from behind. So just a piece on each panel is going to be just fine. Then I can remove the backing paper and get this stuck on. All right, so I'm going to stand up for this one to make sure that it is nice and straight. And you can use the lines on that postage die too to line everything up. Beautiful. Okay, perfect. So now for sending love, I don't want it to be going all the way across. I want it to be stacked. So what I'm going to do here is just do a little tiny snip like that, and kind of make it look intentional, round it off a little bit. Just make sure that this is nice and straight on the L. Just like that. And then I'm going to put sending love right here, kind of in the center, so that it's not covering up my flowers. Just like that. I think that that looks really pretty. So I'm going to use some 1mm foam tape on there as well, just to pop it up a little bit more. You can always do a few extra die cuts too to layer those up. Since I'm making two cards, I'm going to keep this one quick and easy and use my foam tape. All right. Putting that right there, and I will add love just underneath, and I'll have to do one little piece here to go on my L so that doesn't get saggy. I think the hardest thing about these cards today has been just taking off release tape, so that's pretty good. I call that a win. All right, so I might actually put my love right there. Beautiful. That is so pretty. So all we have to do to that one is embellish. For my second card, my panel isn't going to take up that much space, so I want to add a subtle pattern to the negative space. So I have my Masking Magic strips here, and I'm just covering up the edges of the postage because I don't want what I stamped to go past that stitched line. So it's really easy to use your Masking Magic strips to just kind of cover up what you don't want to be stamped. Need to move this one over just slightly. Okay, so now what I'm grabbing is a set that I have in my stash. It's called Peaceful Petals, and I really love this background here. So I'm going to pop this onto the panel. Now, you can see here that it is a bit bigger than halfway. So I'm going to pull this up just slightly. Make sure it's nice and centered, like so. and pick that up. Now sometimes it does pull up your masking magic, so just smooth that back down. And then I can use powder blue. And I don't know if I think I have used this before, but just in case, I'm gonna give it a good wipe with my fingers. Okay, I'm gonna use powder blue on here to just do a tone on tone background. Just something very subtle. And even if it doesn't turn out perfect, that's totally fine, because remember, the postage stamp that we used has a bit of a distressed look, so I'm okay with this looking a bit distressed too. Happy with that. Okay, then I'm gonna wipe this off so that I can replace it just down below. Okay, wipe that off. Going to make sure that it's kind of following along the same lines that I had before. And I don't want there to be a large gap in the middle either. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I'll pick that up. Just watch my masking magic here. And then ink this up. Okay, stamp one more time. That is perfect. And look how close I got that line there. So you can hardly tell that that was stamped twice. Let's take a look. Oh, I love this background. That is so cool. Let me pick this up so that you can see. Isn't that neat? That is such a cool background. So that one's called Peaceful Petals, and I just think that that is just a very usable background. So now I'm going to adhere this. And it wouldn't be a Gina K video if I didn't run out of my tape. Okay, now we can place this in the center of our A2 card panel, just like we did before. I love this. I don't think I want to add any more stamp details on the background. I just think that that pattern is perfect just the way it is. So I'm going to cut 3 pieces of foam just to put on the background of our 3D embossed panel here. Okay, turn this over, and I'm going to kind of pull it out just a little bit from the left side, like that, making sure that's nice and straight. Then I'm going to add Sending Love vertically on this card, because I think it looks much nicer when that's running vertical, since I have that vertical panel on the left. I'm going to put a little tiny piece on that L. There we go. And I'm going to place this right in the center. Just like that, just making sure it's nice and straight before I really get that down. Wow, so pretty. Now let's add just a little bit of bling. The last thing I'm adding are a few gold pearls from the mini pearl mix. I thought gold looked really nice with that one little spot of marigold on my card. And it just adds a little tiny bit of shine to the card front. So placed 5 on each card. Okay. And there you have my finished cards using the brand new Christmas in July 2026 kit, but not creating Christmas cards. I really love both of these cards. I love the colors. I love that pattern. I just think they're stunning. And I hope this opens up some new possibilities with your kit. Thanks so much for joining me here today on the Gina K Designs YouTube channel, and thanks to Gina for inviting me to be here to share my ideas with you. I hope that you will pull out your kit when it arrives and just play with it. If you don't already have your kit, be sure to visit the video description below to find the link to it and the other products that I used to create my 2 cards today. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment letting me know what you liked best about this tutorial and the cards that I made, and subscribe here to the Gina K Designs YouTube channel so that you won't miss more card making inspiration. Thanks so much for watching, friends. You can find me over at Meghann Andrew Creates, and I will see you very soon. Happy creating!